I didn't mean to overhear the number. $1 million. That was the exact figure my boyfriend's mother said, clear confident like she was reading it off a menu, while I stood frozen in the hallway of the apartment I thought was our home. Cash, she added, in your account by Friday if you end this week. I stayed silent, my hand still on my bag, my keys digging into my palm. My heart didn't race. It sank. Slowly, heavily, like something slipping beneath the surface where you can't reach it anymore. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I'm 32 years old, and until that moment, I believed I was in a loving, committed relationship with a man who had chosen me. Apparently, I was wrong. I work as a financial analyst for a mid-sized consulting firm. Nothing flashy, solid hours, predictable income, about $95,000 a year. I've always believed stability mattered more than appearances. I grew up middle class, the kind of household where you paid your bills on time and didn't pretend to be something you weren't. Daniel Harrington came from a different world. Old money, private schools, summer houses with names instead of addresses. His father built a commercial real estate empire worth more than I could comfortably comprehend, and his mother, Margaret Harrington, had never worked a day in her life. She also despised me. Not loudly, not directly. Margaret Harrington specialized in polite cruelty. Backhanded compliments, carefully placed smiles, comments that landed just soft enough to be deniable. "Oh, you're still driving that car," she once said at Christmas, eyes flicking toward my modest sedan. How practical. Or Eleanor is so grounded. Daniel always had such big potential. Translation. I was the thing holding him back. Daniel used to apologize afterward, say his mother was just traditional, that she meant well, that I shouldn't take it personally. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. We'd been together 7 years, living together for 5, talking about marriage in the vague, someday way people do when they think they have time. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. I came home early that day. A meeting canceled last minute. I was thinking about surprising Daniel with dinner, maybe opening the wine we'd been saving. Instead, I heard voices in the living room. His mother's voice carried easily, confident, controlled. "You've wasted 5 years," she said. "You're 30 now, Daniel. Your window for something appropriate is closing." I stopped walking. "I'm offering you a fresh start. Take the money. Leave her. I'll introduce you to people who make sense for you." There was a pause, a long one. Daniel spoke next, quieter. "That's a lot to think about." My stomach twisted. "What's there to think about?" Margaret replied. "She makes under 6 figures. I'm offering you more than 10 years of her salary to walk away." Silence again. Then Daniel said softly but clearly, "Okay, I'll do it." Something in me went very still. Margaret laughed. "I knew you'd come to your senses." I stepped into the room. Both of them turned white. "Hey," I said calmly, too calmly. "I came home early." Daniel started stammering immediately. "Eleanor, this isn't... You weren't supposed to. We were just talking hypothetically." "Hypothetically about leaving me for $1 million, I asked. Margaret recovered first. She always did. She sat straighter, chin lifted. "Yes," she said. "I offered him money, and he accepted. You should be grateful. At least now you know where you stand." I looked at Daniel. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Is that true?" I asked him. "You're taking it." He finally looked up. There was something defensive in his expression, almost resentful. "Maybe I am," he said. "Maybe my mother's right. Maybe I've been settling." Settling. 7 years reduced to a transaction. I nodded slowly. "Okay." That surprised them. No tears, no yelling, no begging. I walked into the bedroom, opened the nightstand, and took out a manila envelope I had kept hidden for months. When I came back, I held it out. "Before you finalize anything," I said, "I think your father deserves to see this." Daniel frowned confused as he opened it. Inside were DNA test results, and the truth his mother never thought would surface. Daniel stared down at the papers, like they might rearrange themselves into something harmless if he waited long enough. "What is this?" he asked. His voice wasn't angry yet. It was confused, off balance, the kind of tone someone uses right before the ground gives way. "DNA test results," I said evenly, and a letter explaining how they came to me. Margaret Harrington lunged forward before Daniel could read another word. "That's fake," she snapped, snatching at the envelope. "This is some kind of trick." "It's not," I replied. "Your husband took the test himself, voluntarily." Her hand froze midair. Daniel looked from her to me, his brow furrowing. "My dad took a DNA test." "Yes." "Why?" I exhaled slowly. This was the part I had rehearsed in my head for months, even when I swore I would never say it out loud. 8 months ago, I said your father asked me for help." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. He was updating his estate planning, I continued. There's a history of heart disease in his family, and his attorneys suggested genetic screening for future generations. He didn't understand how any of the testing worked, so he asked me. Daniel flipped through the pages now. His eyes moved faster, scanning numbers, percentages, unfamiliar scientific language. He wasn't listed as my biological father, he said quietly. The room felt smaller. I told him there had to be a mistake, I said. That labs get things wrong. That samples get mixed up. He was devastated, Daniel. I've never heard a grown man sound like that. He asked me to look into it quietly before telling anyone. Margaret finally found her voice. You had no right. I had every right, I said. He asked me to. Daniel sank onto the couch. So you... What? You just started investigating my family. I verified, I corrected. I didn't accuse, I didn't confront. I confirmed. I told him everything. How I pulled records. How I cross-checked timelines. How I discovered that 31 years ago, during the month he was conceived, Margaret Harrington had been having a private ongoing affair with her tennis instructor. The timeline matched perfectly. I sat on this for 8 months, I said. 8 months of knowing that your father wasn't biologically yours. 8 months of knowing your mother lied to him every single day for 35 years. Daniel's breathing turned shallow. You didn't tell him, he said. Why? Because I didn't want to be the person who destroyed a family. Because I didn't want blood on my hands. Because I thought restraint was the same thing as kindness. I wasn't sure what the right thing was, I admitted. I didn't want to hurt him more. I didn't want to blow everything apart. Margaret laughed suddenly. Hi, sharp. How noble of you. I turned to her. You've spent 5 years treating me like I was disposable, I said. You offered your son $1 million to leave me, and he agreed. Daniel flinched. Now, I continued, you're sitting in my living room, smug and victorious, acting like people are assets you can trade. Margaret stood up. You wouldn't dare show him this. I already did. The words landed hard. What Daniel whispered. I emailed copies to your father 2 minutes before I walked into this room, I said. He deserved to hear it from the evidence, not from me. Margaret's face drained of color. You manipulative. We heard the car before we heard the door. Tires screeching slightly, an engine cutting off too fast, a door slamming. Daniel stood up, panic flashing across his face. That's my dad. The front door flew open. Richard Harrington walked in like a man bracing for impact. His face was red, his hands shaking, his phone clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. Is it true? He demanded, looking straight at his wife. Is any of this true? Margaret opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. This is insane, she said. She fabricated. Did you have an affair? Richard cut in. Silence. The kind that screams. Yes or no, he said. Margaret's shoulders sagged. Just slightly. Just enough. Yes, she whispered. But it was nothing. It didn't mean. Was Daniel mine? Richard asked. Her eyes filled with tears. I thought he was, she said. I didn't know for sure. Daniel made a sound that didn't quite qualify as a word. Richard turned to me. You recorded this conversation, didn't you? I lifted my phone. I'm not stupid, I said. Richard nodded once, slowly. Then he walked out. He didn't say goodbye to his wife. He didn't look at his son. The door closed behind him with a finality that felt like a verdict. Daniel rounded on me. How could you do this? He shouted. You destroyed my family. I met his eyes steady. Your mother offered you money to leave me, I said. You accepted. Your mother lied to your father for 35 years. I told the truth. If that destroyed your family, I added, then your family was already standing on very weak ground. I was never actually going to take the money, he snapped. I tilted my head. You said you would. I heard you. I was just exploring options. And now I said calmly, so am I. His face changed. What does that mean? It means I want you out, I said. We're done. He stared at me like I'd broken the rules of some unspoken game. You can't leave me, he said. I was supposed to leave you. The entitlement was breathtaking. I'll have my lawyer contact yours, I continued. You should probably stay with your mother tonight. Or whatever's left of that arrangement. He started crying then. Not softly, not regretfully, angrily. This isn't how this was supposed to go, he said. No, I replied. It's not. That night I slept alone in the apartment, and for the first time in months the weight on my chest lifted. The silence Daniel left behind felt heavier than the shouting. I sat on the edge of the bed long after the door closed, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic, the apartment settling into a version of itself that no longer belonged to us. My phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Then it started vibrating non-stop on the nightstand. Daniel. I didn't answer. Neither did I answer when Margaret Harrington called an hour later, or when she left a voicemail so sharp it might as well have been a blade. You think you've won, she said. You have no idea what you've done. I slept anyway. Deeply. The kind of sleep that comes when your body finally stops bracing for impact. The next morning, everything exploded. Richard Harrington called me just after sunrise. His voice sounded older, stripped down. I read everything he said, every page, every attachment. I spoke to the lab myself. I stayed quiet. I want to thank you, he continued, not for the pain, but for the truth. That sentence lodged itself somewhere behind my ribs. He told me the confrontation at their house lasted hours, how Margaret denied everything until she didn't, how she cried, then blamed him, how she claimed he'd been distant, distracted, married to his work. So you admitted he'd asked her, and that's when she made the mistake that ended everything. So what if I did? She snapped. You were never around. He paid attention to me. According to Richard, the room went completely still. You just admitted it, he said to her. I didn't mean, you did, he replied, and you did it in front of witnesses. Daniel tried to intervene, Richard told me, tried to calm things down, tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. Richard turned on him then. You were going to take $1 million to abandon your partner, he said. Your mother lied to me for 35 years, and you want me to calm down. By noon, Richard Harrington had moved into a hotel. By evening, he'd retained a divorce attorney. And by the next day, Daniel showed up at my apartment. He didn't knock, he pounded. I opened the door calmly, my phone already recording. You need to fix this, he said the second he saw me. His eyes were red, wild. My dad won't answer my calls. My mother's losing it. This is on you. This, I replied, is on your family. You could have kept your mouth shut, he said. You sat on that information for months. You chose now. Yes, I said, I did. Because you were angry. Because you sold our relationship for money, I corrected. He scoffed. I didn't even get the money. That's not the defense you think it is. He stepped closer. You enjoyed this. Watching everything fall apart. I looked at him carefully. No, I said, I endured it. There's a difference. He laughed bitterly. You think my father's going to thank you forever? He'll resent you. Everyone will. I can live with that. You always had to be right, he said. Always had to have control. I felt something inside me harden. You don't get to rewrite history now, I said. You made your choice. You don't get to blame me because it didn't play out the way you imagined. He stared at me, searching for something, regret maybe. Weakness. He didn't find it. Get your things, I said. You have 30 minutes. You can't just kick me out. The lease is in my name, I replied. Always has been. That stunned him. He hadn't even known. As he packed, his phone rang constantly. He ignored it until finally he didn't. I heard his mother screaming through the speaker. You let her ruin everything, Margaret shouted. I told you not to trust her, Daniel snapped back. You told me to take the money. Silence. Then Margaret's voice dropped cold and venomous. You chose wrong. I watched Daniel's shoulders slump. When he left, he didn't look back. The next few days were chaos. Daniel sent messages accusing me of manipulation, then begging, then threatening. One text read, You destroyed my family. Another followed. Minutes later, Please, can we just talk? The last one crossed a line. If you don't stop this, I'll tell people you were emotionally abusive. That was when I hired a lawyer. I stopped responding entirely. Richard Harrington filed for divorce 3 days later. 35 years of marriage dissolved with a single signature. Margaret Harrington responded the only way she knew how. She went on the offensive. She told anyone who would listen that she was the victim, that her husband had abandoned her over ancient history, that I had manipulated DNA results, that I had weaponized information to destroy a family. She left out the affair. She left out the bribe. She left out the lie that spanned 3 decades. But lies have a shelf life, and hers was expiring fast. The restraining order request arrived on a Tuesday morning. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when my phone buzzed with a notification from an unfamiliar number. A legal service. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. Daniel Harrington had filed for a temporary restraining order against me. The claims were vague but poisonous. Emotionally abusive, controlling, intimidating. He fears for his safety. I read it 3 times each pass, making my hands shake a little more. This was the script. I'd seen it before, friends' co-workers' stories whispered after divorces turned ugly. When someone loses leverage, they change the battlefield. I called a lawyer within the hour. Her name was Monica Reyes, recommended by a colleague who'd survived a brutal separation. She didn't sugarcoat anything. This is a standard escalation tactic, she said after reviewing the filing. If it sticks, it gives him leverage in every negotiation. We shut it down immediately. Can he actually do this? I asked. He can try, she replied. Truth usually has a longer memory than lies. We prepared fast. Text messages. Years worth. Normal conversations. Affectionate ones. Arguments that ended with apologies instead of threats. Photos from vacations. dinner with friends, work events where Daniel smiled easily beside me. And then there was the recording. The $1 million offer. Daniel's voice, calm, clear, unafraid. The hearing was scheduled for Friday. Daniel showed up looking fragile on purpose. Slumped shoulders, soft voice, hands folded like he was afraid to take up space. I almost didn't recognize him. He told the judge he'd always felt pressured, that I made him feel small, that he'd been afraid to leave. Monica didn't interrupt. She waited. Then she presented evidence. Screenshots of affectionate messages sent days before the incident, photos showing relaxed body language, mutual smiles, witness statements from friends and coworkers, even a message from Daniel's own cousin who wrote that he'd never once seen Eleanor behave aggressively or controlling. Finally, Monica played the recording. The room went very quiet. Daniel's voice filled the courtroom, confident, calculating, very much not afraid. The judge leaned back. After a moment, he said, "This appears to be an attempt to gain leverage in a separation, rather than a genuine safety concern." The restraining order was denied. Daniel didn't look at me as we left. Outside the courtroom, he hissed, "You planned this." "No," I replied. "You did." Meanwhile, the real war was happening elsewhere. Richard Harrington's divorce filing detonated like a controlled explosion. 35 years of marriage, significant assets, and now documented paternity fraud. His legal team went straight for financial discovery. Margaret's reaction was immediate and aggressive. She painted Richard as a cold, absent husband, claimed neglect, claimed emotional abandonment, claimed that one mistake shouldn't erase decades of marriage. But this wasn't one mistake. Subpoenas uncovered inconsistencies. Small transfers at first, 20,000 here, 30,000 there. Money quietly diverted into an undisclosed account over the years. Hidden assets. Judges hate hidden assets. Then came the depositions. And the past came back with teeth. The tennis instructor was still alive, retired, living quietly on a modest pension. He confirmed everything. The affair. The timeline. And then he revealed something no one had expected. Margaret Harrington had contacted him 15 years earlier. Not to apologize. To threaten. She'd demanded money to keep him quiet. Over the years, he'd paid her roughly $30,000 to avoid public exposure. Blackmail. That money, it matched the hidden account almost perfectly. Richard was devastated. Not just by the affair, not just by the lie about Daniel's paternity, but by the realization that his wife had been running schemes for most of their marriage. I never really knew her, he told me during one of our conversations. 35 years, and I was married to a stranger. Somehow, through all of this, we'd grown closer. Not romantically, something quieter. Two people bonded by surviving the same deception from opposite ends. Daniel, on the other hand, was unraveling. Without his mother's money, without his father's support, the $1 million fantasy evaporated overnight. His part-time consulting work, something he'd always treated as optional, suddenly had to pay real bills. He showed up at my apartment one evening unannounced, crying. "I made a mistake," he said. "I shouldn't have listened to my mom." "You shouldn't have agreed," I replied. I was confused. Confusion doesn't put a price on someone. "I have nowhere to go." "You have options," I said. "Just not me." His face hardened. "I'll tell people you forced me out." I didn't raise my voice. "I have recordings, witnesses, and a paper trail." He left without another word. The victim playbook only works when people don't look too closely. And everyone was finally looking. The truth didn't just come out. It unraveled. Piece by piece, document by document, every story Margaret Harrington had told herself for decades began to collapse under its own weight. Richard's legal team followed the money first. What started as a handful of suspicious transfers turned into a pattern. Small, consistent withdrawals routed into an account Margaret had never disclosed. Not enough to trigger alarms on their own, but enough to build a quiet safety net over time. An exit fund. Her lawyer tried to downplay it. Household expenses, misunderstood transfers. The judge wasn't impressed. Hidden assets don't just damage your case, they poison it. Then the deposition from the tennis instructor landed like a final nail. He didn't dramatize anything. He didn't need to. He confirmed the affair without embellishment. Confirmed the timing. Confirmed the money. "Did you feel threatened?" the attorney asked. "Yes," he replied. "She said she'd ruin my life if I didn't cooperate." That sentence echoed everywhere. Blackmail, financial deception, paternity fraud. 3 separate pillars of betrayal stacked on top of one another. Richard Harrington stopped sleeping. He told me that during one of our lunches, a habit that had started quietly without either of us acknowledging it. "I keep replaying my life," he said. "Every holiday, every family photo, every time she looked me in the eye and lied." I didn't interrupt. Some grief needs space. What's worse, he continued, is realizing I ignored signs because it was easier. That confession stuck with me. Daniel, meanwhile, was drowning in the aftermath. The $1 million promise had never been real. Margaret's secret account barely held $200,000, most of which was now evaporating into legal fees. The rest frozen pending asset division. His safety net vanished. He called me one night, drunk enough that his words slurred together. "She played me," he said, "my own mother." I closed my eyes. "She taught you exactly how to treat people," I replied. That ended the call. Margaret tried one last angle. She showed up at my office. Security called me down. "There's a woman here insisting she's family." She stood in the lobby like she belonged there. Tailored suit, perfect posture, pearls catching the light. She smiled when she saw me. "We need to talk privately," she said. "I don't think that's a good idea. I'll make it worth your while." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "Are you trying to bribe me now?" "Everyone has a price," she said calmly. "Name yours." I stepped closer. "A time machine. Go back and don't be a terrible person." Her smile cracked. "You think you're clever," she hissed. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." I'm dealing with a woman who cheated on her husband, lied about her son's paternity for 35 years, blackmailed her affair partner, and tried to buy her son out of a relationship, I said. Did I miss anything? Her face went red. "I will destroy you." "Great," I replied. "This building has cameras." She left, throwing one final threat over her shoulder. This isn't over. But it was. She just didn't know it yet. The moment the money vanished, so did Daniel's confidence. It was almost fascinating to watch how quickly his posture changed once he realized there was no rescue coming. No quiet wire transfer. No emergency fund his mother could tap into. No safety net beneath the life he'd always assumed would be cushioned. Reality hit him hard. The calls started again. Carefully timed this time. Late enough to sound lonely. Early enough to catch me off guard. "I didn't understand what I was giving up," he said during one of them. His voice was softer now, stripped of entitlement and bravado. I thought things would work themselves out." "They usually don't," I replied. He showed up a few days later unannounced. Standing outside my apartment with a small suitcase, eyes rimmed red, shoulders slumped like gravity had doubled overnight. "I have nowhere else to go," he said. I didn't step aside. "You have your mother," I said. "She's spiraling," he snapped. "She's blaming everyone. My dad won't speak to her. Her friends aren't calling. The money's gone." "That's not my emergency." He dropped his voice. "I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, I'll cut her off." I studied him. "You already chose," I said. "You just didn't like the outcome." His face twisted. "You don't have to be so cold." "I'm not cold," I replied. "I'm done." Something in him snapped. "You think you're better than us now," he said bitterly. "You always acted like you were morally superior." "No," I said. "I just didn't sell people." He laughed sharply. "You ruined my life." "You outsourced that," I replied. He left, but not quietly. A ceramic vase one his mother had given us shattered against the hallway wall. The sound echoed down the corridor. I took photos, documented the damage, saved the footage from the hallway camera. That night I slept with the door locked and the lights off the apartment finally feeling like mine again. Margaret Harrington didn't handle the fall well. Without the mansion, without the social calendar, without the illusion of control, she unraveled publicly. Her country club membership lapsed. Invitations dried up. Friends stopped returning calls. Turns out people who thrive on status don't enjoy proximity to scandal. She tried to spin it, told anyone who would listen that she was the real victim, that Richard had overreacted, that I'd manipulated everyone with fabricated evidence. But the courts don't care about spin. They care about documentation. And Margaret's paper trail was brutal. Richard's divorce moved quickly after that. The judge didn't mince words. Fraud carries consequences. Hidden assets get penalized. Blackmail annihilates credibility. Margaret received a settlement far less than she'd expected. Roughly 30% of what she'd once assumed was guaranteed. She moved into a condo. Still comfortable, still privileged, but a far cry from the life she believed she deserved. Daniel tried one last time. He left a voicemail. Long, ramblings, accusatory. "I hope you're happy," he said. "You destroyed everything. One day you'll pay for this." I saved it. Not because I was afraid, because I'd learned the value of records. By then, the legal dust was settling. My lawyer finalized our separation cleanly. Short relationship, no shared assets, clear documentation of bad faith. Minimal support, temporary, 6 months. It was almost anticlimactic. When it was over, I sat alone in the apartment and listened to the silence. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. The courtroom was quiet when the final rulings came down. No drama, no raised voices, just decisions rendered by people who had read every document, every transcript, every lie that had tried and failed to pass as truth. Richard Harrington's divorce was finalized first. 35 years reduced to a legal summary, but the weight of it lingered long after the judge spoke. Fraud mattered. Hidden assets mattered. The blackmail mattered. The judge ruled heavily in Richard's favor. Margaret kept a portion of the wealth enough to live comfortably, but nowhere near what she'd assumed was untouchable. Years of deception had cost her more than money. They had cost her credibility. Richard sold the house they'd shared for decades, bought something smaller, quieter. We started meeting for lunch once a month. No agenda, no emotional unloading. Just two people recalibrating after having the ground pulled out from under them. "I don't blame you," he told me once. "I wish I'd known earlier." That surprised me. "You gave me the hardest gift anyone ever has," he said. The truth. He still loved Daniel. Not biologically his son, but he'd raised him. 30 years of birthdays, school plays, scraped knees, late-night talks. DNA didn't erase that. Their relationship was strained. Complicated, but not severed. Mine with Daniel was finished. Our separation was finalized quietly. Short relationship by legal standards. No children. Clear paper trail of bad faith. The judge granted minimal support, 6 months reduced amount, just enough to allow transition. Daniel looked furious when it was announced, as if the world had failed to bend to his expectations. Margaret's social world collapsed faster than her finances. People distanced themselves quietly. Invitations stopped arriving. Friends stopped calling. It's remarkable how quickly proximity to scandal becomes inconvenient. She told anyone who would listen that she was the victim, that Richard had overreacted, that I had manipulated everyone with fake evidence. But lies don't age well under scrutiny. The tennis instructor's testimony became part of the public record. Hard to play innocent when there's a documented history of extortion. She tried to contact me once more after everything was finalized. A voicemail. "I hope you're satisfied," she said. "You destroyed a family." I didn't respond. Daniel moved in with a friend. His consulting work hadn't taken off. Without his mother's connections, opportunities dried up quickly. Last I heard, he was considering going back to school, something more practical. He still blamed me. In his version of events, I was the villain who weaponized information, the woman who refused to play her role quietly. Some people never see themselves clearly. He was one of them. The $1 million offer, it was never real. Margaret didn't have it, not even close. It was a manipulation tactic, a number big enough to force a decision. Daniel fell for it, and I paid attention. The apartment feels different now. Bigger, quieter, like it's finally exhaled. I kept most of the furniture. I'd paid for it after all. I rearranged a few things, moved. The couch swapped the bedroom dresser for something lighter, opened the windows more often. I wanted the space to feel like mine, not a museum of what we almost were. People keep asking me if I'm happy. I never know how to answer that. I'm not devastated. I'm not euphoric. I'm steady. There's relief in that. No more bracing myself for Margaret Harrington's judgment. No more navigating subtle humiliations disguised as concern. No more pretending that love meant tolerating contempt. But there's also loss. 7 years is a long time. Even when the ending is ugly, there were good moments buried in there. Inside jokes, lazy Sundays, plans that felt real at the time. My therapist says it's normal to grieve, even when the relationship needed to end. I'm learning to believe her. Richard is doing better, slowly. Therapy twice a week, long walks, fewer sleepless nights. He told me once that the hardest part wasn't losing his marriage, it was realizing how much of his life had been built on assumptions instead of truth. I trusted comfort over clarity, he said. That stuck with me. He still loves Daniel. That hasn't changed. They're trying to rebuild something, even if it doesn't look the way either of them imagined. Love doesn't evaporate just because biology rewrites the story. Margaret lives in her condo now, still telling her version, still insisting she's the victim, still framing 35 years of deception as one mistake. Her social circle has thinned dramatically. Wealthy people don't like proximity to exposure, especially when there's documentation. She hasn't contacted me again. Daniel is drifting. He tells anyone who will listen that I destroyed his family, that I went nuclear, that I could have kept quiet. What he never says is that he agreed to leave me for money. That omission does a lot of work for him. Do I regret exposing the DNA truth? No. It was devastating. It was painful. It was irreversible. But the damage existed long before I spoke. It was just hidden, rotting quietly behind polite smiles and inherited wealth. I didn't create the collapse. I removed the scaffolding. Some people call that revenge. I call it reality catching up. I feel bad for Richard. He deserved honesty decades ago. I feel bad for myself for staying as long as I did, for mistaking tolerance for loyalty. But Margaret and Daniel, they made choices, repeatedly. They valued money over integrity, image over truth. They gambled that there would never be consequences. They were wrong. As for me, I'm taking a break, logging off for a while, letting the dust settle. My mother keeps trying to set me up with someone from her office. He's apparently very nice, very stable. I tell her I'm not ready. She smiles and says, "When you are." And for the first time in a long time, that doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like possibility. My name is Marion Buchanan. I'm 32 years old, and by the time Friday night rolls around, my entire body feels like it's been wrung out like a dishcloth. 12-hour shifts at the pediatric unit will do that to you. The crying, the emergencies, the terrified parents clinging to hope. I love my job with everything in me, but when I finally clock out at the end of the week, I want exactly 3 things: silent sleep and one decent brunch with my friends if I can manage it. What I don't want is to become the full-time weekend nanny for my older sister's 3 children. But that was the direction things started heading. My sister Melissa has triplets, 3-year-old whirlwinds who are adorable, yes, but also the pure embodiment of chaos. Melissa married Daniel 6 years ago, and for a while, everything seemed normal enough. I honestly thought she was coping well, but somewhere along the line, she started testing the waters with me. Little comments at first. "You're so good with kids, Marion. The girls adore their auntie. Must be nice having weekends off while some of us never get a break." I pretended not to notice the tone underneath the guilt, the quietly simmering resentment, because that's what you do when you don't want to fight. But then she stopped hinting and went straight for the kill. "So she said one afternoon, as if it were the most casual thing in the world, I was thinking, since you don't have kids and your weekends are free, you could take the girls every Saturday. Give me and Daniel some couple time." I blinked. "Every Saturday?" "Yeah, it would be great for them," she chirped. "And you're a nurse, so you know how to handle kids." "I handle sick children at a hospital," I reminded her gently. "That's a little different from babysitting triplets for how many hours exactly?" "Oh, just like 8 to 6, maybe 7. Depends on plans. 10 to 11 hours. Every Saturday. For free." "Melissa, that's not going to work for me." Her expression changed instantly. The shift from sugar sweet to Arctic cold took all of 2 seconds. "Why not? What else are you doing?" "Living my life," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, recovering from my work week. I already work over 50 hours. "But you don't have kids," she snapped. "You don't know what tired is until you have kids." I took a slow breath. "I can babysit occasionally with notice for a few hours. Not every weekend and not for an entire day." She scoffed. "Daniel said you'd be difficult about this." That stung, and she knew it. Later that night, I called Daniel myself. "Did you tell her I'd be difficult?" He groaned. "She's been on me about needing help, and I might have mentioned you work with kids. I didn't mean for her to guilt trip you. I'll talk to her." He didn't, or if he did, it didn't stick. Because that's when the texts began. Daily messages, photos of the girls saying they missed Auntie Marion, passive-aggressive comments at family dinners, guilt, and more guilt. I stayed firm, one Saturday a month, 4 hours maximum with notice, and she acted like I'd spit in her face. Then came last Saturday. I was still in my pajamas at 9 in the morning, sipping coffee in absolute silence, savoring the only slow moment I'd had all week. When the doorbell rang, I nearly ignored it, but something felt off, a heaviness in my gut I couldn't explain. I opened the door and froze. There they were, 3 tiny toddlers standing on my porch, a diaper bag tossed beside them, and Melissa's minivan speeding down my driveway. She didn't even look back. She didn't wave. She didn't get out of the car. She just dumped her children on my doorstep and drove away. The youngest immediately burst into tears. I ushered them inside, because what else do you do, and grabbed my phone. Straight to voicemail. "Melissa, what are you doing? Come get your kids." A text pinged moments later. "I have work today. Emergency shift. You'll be fine. There are snacks in the bag. Pick up around 5. "Work? Sure." I called Daniel next. "Hey, did you know Melissa dropped the girls off at my house?" A pause so long I thought the call dropped. "What? No." "She said she picked up an emergency shift at the hospital." "Well, she didn't. She left them on my porch and drove away. I never agreed to this." "What?" He sounded genuinely blindsided. "She texted me saying she was called into an emergency. I'm at my buddy's place right now. I can't watch them all day. She's not answering me either. Let me try to reach her." I waited with the girls for 15 tense minutes before he called back, voice tight. "She's not answering me, but I checked." Find my. Marion, her phone is at a spa resort, 40 minutes away. She didn't go to work. She lied to both of us. A cold anger spread through me, slow and steady. Do you want me to come pick them up? He asked. Yes, please. He arrived half an hour later, jaw clenched so hard I worried his teeth would crack. He gathered the girls, apologized over, and muttered, I'll handle this before driving away. I thought that would be the end of it. But less than an hour later, my phone lit up with messages not from Daniel. From Melissa. You called him? You couldn't just watch them for one day. You had to ruin everything. I stared at the text numb. You lied. You abandoned your kids. I warned you I wouldn't do this. You're selfish and childless and bitter. No wonder no man sticks around. I blocked her. I made myself lunch. I cleaned up the toys the girls had scattered, and I reminded myself over and over that I wasn't the one who caused this. But I had no idea how deeply my sister's lies went, or how badly this decision my no was about to tear my entire family apart. For the rest of that day, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. A call, a text, an apology. I knew deep down would never come. Instead, silence settled over everything thick and electric, the kind that tells you something ugly is being stitched together behind closed doors. By Sunday morning, the stitching unraveled. My phone rang at 7 a.m. Mom. I should have let it go to voicemail, but habit made me swipe. Marion, she began, voice tight with disappointment. We need to talk about the mess you made. I sat up in bed. The mess I made? You could have just watched the girls for one day. Melissa was overwhelmed. Mothers get overwhelmed. She didn't have a shift, Mom. She was at a spa. She told both of us she was working. That's between her and her husband. You didn't need to be the one to blow it up. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd it made my brain glitch. So I should have, what? Watched the kids all day, said nothing, and let her lie to Daniel indefinitely. Mom hesitated as if searching for the right moral angle. You could have talked to her first woman to woman instead of tattling to her husband. Tattle, I repeated. Mom, I'm 32. And still single, she added sharply, as if that explained my moral failings. You're always so rigid. You need to learn to bend. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone for a long time, feeling the sting settle inside me like a bruise. Minutes later, a message buzzed. Daniel, can we talk? Not about taking sides. I just need someone who isn't telling me what to think. We met for coffee Tuesday morning before my shift. He looked rough hair, uncombed, eyes ringed with exhaustion, the weight of something heavier than sleep deprivation hanging off his shoulders. I feel stupid, he said quietly, hands wrapped around his mug like it was the only warm thing left in his life. How did I not see it? Trust isn't stupidity, I told him. You believed your wife. That's normal. He exhaled shakily, and then the truth poured out. Once he realized Melissa hadn't just lied about a single shift, he started digging, and everything began to unravel. She hadn't worked her retail job in 8 months. She'd been telling him she was picking up extra shift, the paychecks she deposited. They were actually cash withdrawals from a secret credit card he didn't know existed. She'd racked up $23,000 in debt. Spa days, shopping sprees, brunches with friends, a gym membership she never used, and the babysitter he thought he was paying. Just a friend who watched the girls for an hour or two before Melissa picked them up and claimed they were there all day. Melissa had crafted an entire alternate life, a fantasy where she wasn't drowning as a mother, but thriving as a woman with freedom, time, and money. When he finished, Daniel rubbed his temples like he was trying to physically push the embarrassment out of his skull. She says it's because I don't appreciate her, he murmured, that raising triplets is too hard, and I should have seen she needed help. Needing help doesn't justify fraud, I said gently, or abandoning the girls on my porch. He didn't disagree. I left him with a hug and no advice because this wasn't my marriage to fix. But while Daniel was unraveling the truth, Melissa was busy weaving something new. By Thursday, she had launched an entirely new Instagram account. Her old one had gone quiet after she and Daniel's fight rippled through their friend group. The new account was a masterpiece of victimhood. A shadow will pretend to be your sister, but she's really your enemy. Some people destroy families because they're jealous of what they can't have. Imagine being so lonely you'd rather ruin a marriage than help with kids. She didn't mention my name, but she didn't have to. Family started texting. Friends of Melissa women I barely knew began sliding into my DMs. You should be ashamed. Homewrecker. You're jealous of her life because she has what you never will. It would have hurt less if it were strangers. But 2 of my cousins messaged too. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I didn't fight. But the isolation that crept in like frost. The one person I leaned on was Evan, my boyfriend. You didn't do anything wrong, he reminded me as we cooked dinner one night. You protected 3 children and told the truth. That's not betrayal, Marion. That's integrity. His calmness kept me tethered. His certainty kept me from folding into guilt. But Melissa wasn't done. Her mother called me next. You destroyed my daughter's life, she hissed into the phone. Are you happy now? Your daughter destroyed her own life, I replied evenly by lying. Stealing and abandoning her kids. She was struggling. So were the rest of us, I said. But we didn't commit fraud. She hung up on me. By the time the family group chat erupted into a full-scale war, half blaming me, half blaming Melissa and my brother-in-law, too. Ashamed to say anything. I realized something. This wasn't a moment. It was a spark. And the fire it lit was about to burn through every corner of our family. 3 weeks passed, and every day felt like walking through fog, thick, heavy, confusing. I kept wondering when the chaos would settle, when people would stop calling, when Melissa would run out of ways to twist reality. I underestimated her, because the next escalation, I truly didn't see coming. It started on a Wednesday morning right after a brutal night shift. I had just dragged myself up the stairs to my apartment when I saw her, Melissa, sitting on the floor outside my door, legs pulled against her chest, mascara streaked across her cheeks. For a moment, I thought something terrible had happened. Instinct kicked in. Are you okay? I asked. She lifted her head. Her eyes were puffy red wet. We need to talk. I really don't think we do, I said quietly. Please, 5 minutes. I just want to explain. Against my better judgment, and because I'm not cold enough to ignore someone sobbing outside my home, I let her speak. I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, a barrier, a boundary. She launched into a long explanation how motherhood was too hard, how Daniel didn't understand, how she felt invisible, how the spa days were the only thing keeping her sane, how she never meant for it to go this far. I listened. I didn't interrupt. But when she finished, I asked the question that mattered. And the $23,000 debt, she faltered. I was going to pay it back with what I asked. You quit your job 8 months ago. I was going to get another job eventually. And the lying I pressed, to your husband, to me, to your kid's babysitter, to your boss, to everyone. Her eyes filled again. I just needed space. You don't understand what it's like to never get a moment to yourself. I understand hardship, I said. I don't understand fraud, or dumping your kids on someone without consent. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I made mistakes. Mistakes are forgetting to pay a bill, I replied, unable to soften my tone. Not a full year of deception. Her face hardened, crying evaporated, and the venom returned. You're cold, she hissed. You're heartless. You're probably incapable of love. No wonder you're not married. There it was, the weapon she always reached for. I stepped back into my apartment and closed the door. She texted later, calling me cruel, saying I had abandoned her when she needed compassion. I blocked her, again. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't, because Melissa played her final card the next day. My mom called again, this time sobbing. Marion, did you know about this? About how Daniel treats Melissa? I sat up straighter. What are you talking about? She says he's emotionally abusive, Mom cried. Financially controlling. That he isolates her from everyone. That she's been trapped for years. My blood went cold. She's lying, I said firmly. But she seems so scared. She's been lying for over a year, I cut in. Why would she stop now? Dad called shortly after. I don't believe a word of it, he said. But your mother's bought in. This is going to get uglier. He wasn't wrong, because 2 days later, Daniel called me. She accused me of emotional abuse, he said flatly. Filed a statement. My lawyer says it's a desperate move, but we have to treat it seriously. I closed my eyes. Daniel, I'm so sorry. She's making this adversarial, he continued. And the lawyer said, if she wants a fight, we file for divorce now, with everything we have. And so he did. The divorce filing went through the next morning. Grounds: financial deception, child abandonment, fraud, instability, and now, false accusations. Daniel's lawyer built a meticulously documented case. Bank statements, fake work schedules, spa receipts, screenshots of her telling friends how easy it was to fool him, notes from the babysitter's real hours, evidence of the secret credit card, photos matching work days with brunches and mall trips. And the worst one, a text she sent to her sister 3 months ago. He has no clue. LOL. As long as I keep saying I'm tired from work, he believes everything. Men are so dumb. The temporary custody hearing came faster than any of us expected. I wasn't in the courtroom, but Daniel told me everything afterward. Melissa's lawyer attempted to paint her as a devoted stay-at-home mother who had simply been overwhelmed. They framed her financial behavior as coping mechanisms. They claimed the spa days were a mental health break, and the debt, a misunderstanding. Then Daniel's lawyer stood. He presented the timeline, showed the receipts, read the text messages aloud, displayed screenshots of her location history on the days she claimed she was working. He ended with the photo evidence of the triplets standing alone on my porch. Melissa broke down crying. The judge wasn't moved. Temporary primary custody was awarded to Daniel. Melissa would receive supervised visitation only twice a week at a family center. No overnights, no exceptions. Child support was ordered symbolically since she wasn't working, but it set the expectation for future responsibility. That night, Melissa called me from a blocked number. Her voice was shaking with desperation. "You have to talk to him. He listens to you. You have to make him see reason. I can't lose my babies." My throat tightened, but I held the line. I can't make him do anything. And Melissa, you should have thought about your babies before you built a year of lies. I was sick, she sobbed. I think I have depression or something. Then get help, I said softly. Get treatment. Get a diagnosis. Present it to the court. But don't put this on me. You're turning everyone against me. No, I said, you did that yourself. She inhaled sharply. I hope you're happy, she whispered. Then the line went dead. And for the first time since this began, a quiet, sinking realization settled inside me. This wasn't just a crisis, this was a collapse. And none of us were walking away from it unchanged. The days after the custody hearing felt strangely quiet, not peaceful, not resolved, just suspended. The kind of silence that hangs in the air after a crash, when dust is still drifting and no one has figured out what the wreckage means yet. But Melissa wasn't done. If anything, losing temporary custody lit a fuse inside her. She moved out of Daniel's house the same night she was served and went straight to her mother's place. It didn't take long for her downward spiral to become impossible to ignore, her new Instagram account filled with long dramatic paragraphs about betrayal, motherhood, injustice, and how no one understood her pain. She didn't say my name, but she didn't have to. Every post was a carefully sharpened arrow aimed at me. Family members began sending me screenshots like, I needed help interpreting her accusations. Are you jealous of her? Why did you ruin her marriage? Why couldn't you have just helped? I ignored all of them. In the family group chat, I finally wrote, I'm not discussing this. Direct any questions to Daniel. That message alone caused a small riot. Relatives argued for hours, some insisting Melissa was a victim, others pointing out her lies. My parents hovered somewhere in the middle, desperately trying to hold the family together without acknowledging the truth. Dad called me privately more than once to tell me he didn't blame me. Mom, however, seemed determined to. She phoned again that Sunday. Your sister is devastated, she said immediately. She's barely eating. She cries all day. Doesn't that matter to you? Of course it matters, I told her. But her choices put her in this position. She needs support, Mom argued. What she doesn't need is you taking sides. I didn't take sides, I said. I told the truth. Mom hung up mid-sentence. I sat there for a long time afterward, trying not to let the familiar ache settle too deeply. That feeling of always being the one expected to bend, to carry the weight, to be the reasonable one. Meanwhile, Daniel was falling apart in a completely different way. We met for coffee again, and seeing him nearly broke me. He looked hollow, like grief had carved out parts of him that used to be solid. She keeps texting me, he said quietly. Not to apologize, not to talk about the girls, just to blame you. Me. She says you manipulated everything, that you planted doubts in my head, that you always resented her. I stared at my cup. Do you believe her? Daniel shook his head immediately. No. Marion, you're the only person who's been honest with me through all this. I felt something warm push against my ribs, not relief, something heavier. Responsibility, maybe. We sat in silence for a while before I asked. So what happens now? My lawyer says she wants mediation, he replied. But I think she wants something else. I just don't know what. I found out a week later. I was folding laundry when I got a call from a number I recognized immediately, Melissa's mother. Her voice for once wasn't full of fury. It was measured diplomatic. That alone put me on edge. Marion, she began, we'd like to propose a solution that brings peace back to the family. I didn't speak. She took silence as encouragement. Melissa is willing to drop her request for additional custody time, she continued, if you're willing to apologize and help with the children regularly. I blinked. Apologize for what I finally asked. For overreacting, she said, and for causing unnecessary conflict. If you take the girls on weekends, Melissa can show stability to the court and everything will calm down. I almost laughed. It came out more like disbelief. So, she wants free childcare from me. I said slowly, in exchange for cooperating in her divorce settlement. That's not. And she wants a public apology for refusing to be manipulated. You're being difficult, she snapped. Be a sister. Help her. Before I could respond, I heard another voice on the line. Dad, my daughter doesn't owe yours anything, he said sharply. And using Marion like this is exactly why Melissa is in trouble. Silence. Then the call disconnected. I set my phone down and just sat there stunned. It was the first time in my entire life my father had intervened decisively publicly on my behalf. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to laugh. Mostly I just felt seen. But even with Dad stepping in, nothing about the situation with Melissa got easier. She started arriving late to supervise visitations, arguing with the staff, posting cryptic messages like, "Some sisters should have never been born. When the truth comes out, some people will regret everything." Daniel documented all of it. His lawyer advised him to. My own life felt like I was balancing between two worlds, the normalcy of work and my relationship with Evan and the emotional battlefield of my family. Evan became my anchor. He didn't flinch when things got messy. He was steady, thoughtful, honest. When my mother made passive-aggressive comments during dinner, he squeezed my knee under the table. When Melissa posted yet another melodramatic rant, he reminded me I wasn't the one unraveling. When I doubted myself, he told me I had done the right thing, even if no one else could see it yet. You held the line, he told me one night. People hate boundaries when they benefit from you not having any. I knew he was right. But knowing doesn't make the wounds hurt less. 2 weeks before the divorce was scheduled to finalize, Melissa tried her final play. She didn't call me. She didn't reach out to Daniel. She sent her mother to my parents. The mediation proposal was the same. I apologize publicly. I help with childcare every weekend. I restore Melissa's image in the family. Then she'll drop her fight for additional custody. Dad shut it down immediately. Mom said nothing. That silence was louder than any accusation. Melissa's lawyer soon told her the truth. She'd been avoiding the court, wasn't going to reverse anything. The evidence was too extensive, her recent behavior too concerning. She stopped fighting, stopped calling, stopped posting. It wasn't peace, not yet. But it was the beginning of the end. The final hearing came and went faster than any of us expected. Months of tension, court filings, accusations, tears, screaming silence, and exhaustion condensed into a single strangely calm morning. Daniel texted me afterward, "It's done." 2 words, heavy enough to knock the air out of my lungs. The divorce was finalized. Melissa didn't fight it. Her lawyer had already told her what she was up against and what she stood to lose if she dragged the battle out longer. So she folded quietly and suddenly, as if a switch somewhere inside her had finally given out. The settlement reflected the year she had spent weaving lies. Daniel got primary custody of the triplets. The girls stayed with him full-time. Melissa was granted every other weekend visits supervised at first, and then possibly transitioning to unsupervised once she completed the requirements the judge laid out: therapy, financial counseling, parenting classes. And the debt, all $23,000 of it, was hers alone. Daniel's lawyer had made sure the court understood how, when, and why it had been created. She would be paying it off for years. When Daniel told me, he didn't sound triumphant, not even relieved, just tired. Like a man finally stepping off a battlefield and realizing the noise hasn't stopped in his head yet. He said the girls were adjusting. They were young enough that most of this would fade into background memory. They loved him fiercely. They loved Melissa too, even if their time with her was going to be limited and structured for a while. Kids are resilient like that. Sometimes I think they're stronger than the adults raising them. Life settled slowly after that. Not cleanly, not perfectly, just slowly. Daniel found a rhythm as a single father. His workplace arranged a semi-flexible schedule. He hired a real professional babysitter for the days he needed extra help. He still looked tired most of the time, but there was a steadiness to him now, a clarity that hadn't been there before. I helped him sometimes on my terms when I volunteered, not when anyone demanded it. That made all the difference. Holding one of the girls while she giggled in my lap felt warm in a way that didn't drain me. It felt like family, not obligation. My relationship with Mom didn't snap back together, though. We had dinner a few times, awkward ones. She couldn't say the words I was wrong, and I didn't push her. She made small comments here and there that still stung, but she seemed to realize how far she'd overstepped. The warmth wasn't fully gone, but it wasn't fully back either. Dad, on the other hand, became unexpectedly protective. He checked in, not nosy, just present. A shift I didn't expect, but quietly cherished. Melissa didn't contact me after the divorce. Not a call, not a text, not even a half-hearted apology. I was blocked on everything from her end, though she likely assumed I had blocked her first. I heard bits and pieces through family. She was working retail again. Her mother was still furious at everyone except Melissa. She was paying off the debt little by little. She saw the triplets every other weekend under supervision and didn't fight it. It was strange. A year ago, her life looked picture perfect to everyone watching. Now she was rebuilding from the ground up. Do I feel sorry for her? A little. Not because she didn't deserve consequences. She did every single one. But because I can see the cracks now, the entitlement, the desperation, the belief that she deserved more than everyone else because motherhood had exhausted her. I've worked in pediatrics long enough to know what burnout looks like and what denial looks like too. Melissa had drowned quietly for years and then convinced herself that deception was survival. But feeling sympathy doesn't mean I regret anything. I don't. People keep asking if I'm glad things turned out in my favor. What a strange question. No one is glad a marriage collapsed. No one is glad 3 children now split weekends between homes. No one is glad a family fell apart. What I am glad about is that the truth came out. That Daniel isn't being deceived anymore. That the girls are safe. That I didn't cave, not that first Saturday. Not the 100 times afterward when pressure tightened around me like a fist. The entire ordeal taught me something I already knew, but had never been forced to stand on. Boundaries matter. The first no I said weeks ago, the one that started everything, was the hardest one. Not because the task was difficult, but because saying no to family is treated like a crime. If I had caved, then I'd still be a free, uncredited nanny every weekend while Melissa ran up credit cards on spa days. People who depend on your lack of boundaries will always call you selfish when you finally grow some. Let them. The fallout isn't your responsibility. The truth is simple. I'm not the villain. I'm not the hero. I'm a woman who said no once and didn't take it back. My name is Alice Marsh, and I am 39 years old. If you had told me 7 years ago that I would one day be accused of ruining a teenager's life by enforcing bedtime homework and basic respect, I would have laughed. But life has a strange sense of humor, especially when you're raising a child who isn't biologically yours, but whose heartbreak, rage, and confusion end up becoming part of your daily air. I met my boyfriend Joseph when his daughter Lila was 9. Back then, she was a shy girl who clung to her father's hand in public and pretended not to notice when he whispered encouragements into her hair. She wasn't used to consistency boundaries or even routine. Her biological mother, Joseph's ex, floated in and out of her life like a traveling performer. Loud entrances, even louder gifts, disappearing acts that left bruises none of us could see, but all of us could feel. By the time Lila turned 16, she had rewritten history in her mind. Suddenly, her mother was the fun one, the cool one, the parent who understood her. And Joseph and I. We were the villains who asked her to do algebra and take a shower. For 7 years, I had driven her to weekend soccer, bought her clothes she outgrew. Within months, paid for field trips, attended teacher conferences, and helped her rewrite essays late into the night, even when I had work the next morning. I gave her everything. A parental figure gives stability, time, money, effort, heart. And yet she increasingly looked at me like I was a wall blocking her from some magical alternative life. And every conflict eventually ended in the same sentence, "You're not my real mom." I pretended those words didn't puncture me. I pretended they didn't sting every time they landed. I pretended I wasn't slowly drowning in the reality that loving a child doesn't guarantee they will love you back. But something had been building a kind of quiet storm inside our home, and I knew deep down it would break eventually. It happened 2 weeks ago. It started with a party. Not just any party, the kind of party the local police already had bookmarked in their weekend plans. A senior's house, parents out of town, alcohol, God knows what else. The sort of environment where teenagers turned into stories you read about in trembling Facebook posts. Lila stood in our kitchen, makeup half-done, hair curled as if her attendance was already guaranteed. She didn't ask. She announced, "I'm going tonight." Joseph looked at me first, a silent conversation passing between us. We had learned to speak entire dialogues through eye contact. "No," he said gently, "it's not safe." Her glare cut straight into him, then into me, as if we had conspired against her. "That's not fair. Everyone's going." "Everyone isn't our responsibility," I replied calmly. "You are, and you're not going." She turned to Joseph. "Dad, tell her she can't control me." Joseph, bless his tired heart, stayed steady. "Alice is right. We're both saying no." End of discussion. The word no detonated like a grenade. Lila slammed her palms onto the counter, shaking. Her eyes glistened with indignation and hurt pride. Then, as if performing for an invisible audience, she pulled out her phone and dialed her biological mother on speaker. "Mom, can I come live with you? I can't stay here anymore. They're controlling everything I do. You understand me, right?" I felt Joseph's breath hitch beside me. Through the phone, her mother's syrupy voice came through. "Of course, baby. You can always stay with me. I'll come get you this weekend." When Lila hung up, she smirked at us, a victorious, cruel smirk she had learned from the woman on the other end of the phone. "I'm moving in with my real mom," she declared. "She actually cares about me." The words hit Joseph like a punch. I watched color drain from his face. The instinct to stop her, to prevent her from making a life-altering mistake, pulsed hard and fast in my chest. But I swallowed it. Instead, I said softly, "Okay." Lila faltered. "What? If that's really what you want," I said, steady, calm, heartbreak, buried beneath resolve. "Pack your things." She blinked, stunned. She had expected a fight. She had wanted one. "You're not going to stop me." "No. You're 16, old enough to make choices. Old enough to live with the consequences of those choices." Joseph's hand found mine under the counter, squeezing it in fear and reluctant agreement. Weeks before this moment, during calmer days, we had talked about the possibility that Lila might want to leave. We had even made a plan, a painful, necessary plan, to let her go if she chose her mother's fantasy over our stability. It didn't make the moment easier. Lila stomped upstairs to pack slamming drawers for dramatic effect. Every slam felt like a crack in my ribs. Friday arrived colder than usual. Her bio mother arrived in a dented silver sedan, music blasting through half-broken speakers. She barely stepped outside to help with bags. Lila loaded everything herself, refusing to meet our eyes. "You'll regret this," she shouted from the passenger seat. "Maybe," I said quietly. "Have fun." The car sped off. Joseph's shoulders crumpled and he buried his face into my hair as I held him. I felt his tears dampen my shirt. "She'll be back," I whispered. My own voice trembled. "And when she comes back, it'll be on our terms, not hers, not her mother's." "What if she doesn't?" he breathed. "Then we gave her the freedom she begged for, and she'll learn what freedom really costs." But the truth curled bitter and heavy in my chest. Lila had no idea what she was walking into. She didn't know her mother was barely employed. She didn't know the woman lived 2 hours away in a cramped apartment with a boyfriend and 3 kids under 7. She didn't know her mother routinely dodged child support, ignored bills, and chased excitement more than stability. She didn't know, because we had never told her. Some lessons, no matter how much it hurts, must be lived to be understood. 2 days passed, then 3. Silence. Joseph checked his phone every hour. I kept myself busy cooking, cleaning, working late, anything to avoid imagining Lila sleeping on a couch while believing we had abandoned her. And then almost exactly 2 weeks later, Joseph's phone rang. Lila's number, her voice shaking, crying so hard she could barely speak. Can I come home?" And just like that, everything was about to break open. When Lila called that day, her voice didn't sound like the defiant girl who had slammed our doors and declared her independence. It sounded small, wrecked, fragile in a way I had never heard before, not even when she was 9 and afraid to sleep alone. But I didn't answer. Not yet. Joseph looked at me with panic in his eyes as the phone vibrated across the counter. "Alice, pick up!" "Not yet," I murmured. "She needs to tell us why she's calling, not just cry and expect us to rescue her." The phone stopped ringing. 10 seconds later, it rang again. This time I answered. "Lila," I said gently. She gulped air like she'd been underwater. She stole it. She choked. My spine tightened. Joseph stepped closer, gripping the counter. "Slow down. What happened?" More sobbing. Words caught in her throat. "Your mom," I pressed softly. "What did she take?" "All of it," she whimpered. She took all my money. Her savings. The money she'd collected from birthdays, holidays, babysitting, and the part-time job she worked last summer. Over $3,000 she had guarded like it was a key to her future. Joseph's jaw flexed with rage, but he stayed silent. "How did she take it?" I asked, even though I already had a sinking suspicion. She said she needed to borrow it for rent. She promised she'd pay me back next week. But then I heard her and her boyfriend talking about buying a TV. Her voice cracked. I checked the account and it's empty. All of it. Gone. I closed my eyes, not in shock and sorrow, in anger I couldn't show her yet, in a grief that felt strangely parental. "Alice, please," she whispered. "Can you come get me? Please, I'm begging you." "Where's your mother now?" I asked. She left. She said she had to go to work, but she doesn't even have a job. Her boyfriend's girlfriend, she corrected herself through tears. I mean, his other kid's mom, she told me I had to watch the kids while she goes to the store. I'm not a babysitter, but they said I have to help out because I'm living here for free. A sound escaped her, the broken, breathless cry of someone whose world collapsed faster than she could process. I felt Joseph reaching for me, his other hand pressed to his forehead like he was trying not to fall apart. Lila, I asked softly, are you safe? She hesitated. I'm not in danger, but I don't want to be here. It's awful. There's barely any food. I'm sleeping on the couch. The kids scream all night. I can't do this. Her voice shrank. I want to come home, please. My heart clenched, but I forced my breath to steady. I could hear Joseph mouthing, we have to go get her. Now. But I shook my head. Lila, I said, we'll call you back. She panicked. No, Alice, please don't hang up. But I did. Gently. Carefully. Because if I didn't take a moment to breathe, I might have cracked. Joseph stared at me. Alice, she's suffering. Yes, I said, but she's not unsafe. She's not being abused. She's uncomfortable. There's a difference. You really want to make her stay there longer? No, I whispered. I want her home. But if we run to save her now, she'll learn nothing. She'll do this again the moment she gets angry. Joseph sank onto the couch, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. She's still a kid. She's also the one who insisted she was grown enough to leave. He lifted his head, eyes glassy with fear. Do you really think this is right? I took his hand, squeezing it tightly. She's learning what her mother is truly like, something we could never teach her with lectures or rules. This is reality teaching her. He didn't argue after that. He didn't agree either. But he trusted me even when it shattered him to wait. 1 hour later, we called her back. Her voice was raw, exhausted. Lila, I said gently, you can come home. She released a sob of relief. But not today. Silence. Not tomorrow either. What, she cried. Alice, no, please. You're going to stay there for a week, I said. 1 week. You chose to live with your mother. You told us she was better. Now you experience it fully. That's cruel. No, that's called consequences. You don't understand, she cried. I hate it here. We told you that household wasn't what you imagined. You didn't believe us. Now you're learning. What if I can't make it a week? You will, I said. You're strong, and you're resourceful. You can handle a week. I hate you, she screamed. I swallowed the sting. Call us in a week. Then I hung up. Joseph stared at me like I had turned into someone unrecognizable. Alice, a week. She needs to feel the full weight of her choice, I said quietly. Otherwise, she'll always believe we forced her into this life. She needs to know what she left behind and why. Joseph leaned back, staring at the ceiling, eyes shimmering. This is going to break her. Maybe, I whispered. But sometimes things have to break before they can be rebuilt. 3 days passed. Then 4. Lila called 6 times. Texted 20. Each message a new fracture in the fantasy she'd built around her mother. No food again. Her boyfriend is yelling. The kids won't listen. She makes me clean everything. The couch smells like wet dog. They keep promising to pay me back. I don't think they ever will. Please, please come get me. Each time I repeated 4 more days. 3 more days. 2 more days. Joseph watched me with equal parts awe and torment. Are we doing the right thing? He asked. We're giving her the truth, I said. It's the only thing she's never gotten from her mother. But then on day 5, something happened we hadn't expected. Lila's biological mother called Joseph. He put the phone on speaker. You need to come get your daughter, she snapped. She's too much work. She complains. She's rude. She stresses out my relationship. She's 16, Joseph said flatly. She's your daughter. Yeah, well, I didn't sign up for full-time parenting. That's your job. You told her she could live with you, I said sharply. I thought it would be fun. But she doesn't listen. She's ungrateful. She's making everything harder. Welcome to parenting, I replied. You wanted to be the cool mom. Now be the real mom. Just come get her. No, Joseph said firmly, voice shaking with anger he'd held for years. You wanted this. Keep her for the rest of the week. Then we'll talk. She sputtered. I never agreed to. You agreed when you picked her up, I hissed. She's your responsibility. Figure it out. Then Joseph hung up. He stared at me after chest rising and falling too fast. Did we do the right thing? He asked again quietly. I put my hand over his. Yes, but inside my stomach twisted. 4 more days of this. 4 more days until everything changed again. 7 days. That was the agreement. 7 days for Lila to see who her mother really was, not the version she'd built from weekend visits and birthday gifts, but the one shaped by broken promises, unpaid bills, and an absence she never wanted to face. Joseph barely slept the night before we were scheduled to pick her up. I found him sitting on the edge of the bed at 3 a.m., elbows on his knees, staring into the dark like he was bracing for something he couldn't name. "Are we early?" he whispered. "No," I said softly. "We're on time, and she needs us to be on time." I didn't sleep either. By morning, the 2-hour drive felt twice as long. Neither of us played the radio. Neither of us talked much. We just held hands in the center console, gripping each other like anchors. When we finally pulled into the complex, the sight of it hollowed my chest. The apartment building sagged with neglect. Rusted balconies, missing railing bars, children's toys scattered like debris from a storm. A broken tricycle lay overturned in the dirt. The playground equipment was rusted through. Trash overflowed from dumpsters like it was trying to escape. Joseph exhaled shakily. "She's been here for a week." I squeezed his arm. "We're here now." We climbed 3 flights of concrete stairs, each step echoing with muffled screams of children from nearby units. Joseph knocked. The door swung open almost immediately. A woman, early 20s, exhausted hair in a messy bun, a baby clinging to her hip, and 2 toddlers wrestling behind her, looked at us like we were a rescue team arriving after a flood. "Oh, thank God," she breathed. "She's on the couch." She didn't invite us in. She fled deeper into the apartment, shouting at a kid to stop climbing the refrigerator. The smell hit us full force as we stepped inside. A mix of dirty diapers, stale cigarette smoke, sweat, sour milk, and something rotting in the kitchen sink. It clung to the walls, to our clothes, to our skin. My throat tightened. The living room was a battlefield of toys, unfolded laundry, and half-eaten food containers. In the center, on the sagging brown couch, was Lila. She looked small and older, and heartbreakingly fragile. Her hair was greasy matted at the ends. Her clothes, the same ones she'd told us about 3 days ago, were wrinkled, stained, and far too thin for the cold draft pushing through the cracked window. She didn't jump up, didn't run to us. She just looked up slowly, eyes rimmed, red face pale and drained. "Can we go?" she whispered. Joseph's face crumpled. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said. "We can." "Where's your mom?" I asked gently. "Gone," she murmured. "She left yesterday. Said she needed space." The other woman snorted from the kitchen. Translation, she went to her buddies, so she wouldn't have to deal with her own kid. "Left me with all 4. 4, Joseph repeated. "These 3, the woman said, pointing with her chin, plus yours. Same difference when you're stuck doing everything." Lila stood shakily. Her belongings, everything she owned, were stuffed into 2 black trash bags in the corner. She picked one up, but Joseph rushed over. "I've got it," he said, voice cracking. We carried the bags down the stairs. Lila followed a few steps behind us, shoulders slumped, hugging herself against the cold. Not once did her mother appear. Not once did she try to say goodbye. The first 30 minutes of the car ride were silent. Lila sat in the back seat, staring out the window, her reflection faint in the glass. Her eyes blinked slowly, as if even her thoughts were too heavy to lift. Joseph kept glancing at her through the mirror. Once, twice again. Every time he looked like he was fighting tears. Halfway home, Lila finally spoke. "I'm sorry." Joseph choked on his breath. I reached over, squeezing his arm so gently he wouldn't break. "We'll talk when we get home," I said softly. "Rest for now." She nodded, then turned back toward the window. I watched her reflection for a moment, the way her lip trembled when she thought none of us could see how tightly she clutched her own sleeves, like she was afraid she might disappear if she didn't hold herself together. When we stepped inside the house, Lila froze. Not dramatically, not like a revelation, but like someone staring at a memory they had taken for granted. The clean floors, the warm air, the scent of dinner ingredients left over from the night before, the blanket neatly folded on the couch. A kitchen that didn't smell like decay. It hit her. Home wasn't perfect, but it was stable, safe, hers. "Can I—" Her voice cracked. "Can I take a shower?" "Of course," I said. She went upstairs. The water ran for 40 minutes. When she emerged, she looked like a ghost still soaking in the shock. Clean hair, fresh clothes, eyes red again, not from allergies, from crying. We sat in the living room, not lecturing, not scolding, waiting. Joseph leaned forward. "Lila," he said gently, "what did you learn?" She stared at her hands for a long time. The silence stretched. Then, that I was stupid. "No," Joseph said softly, but I raised a hand to stop him. "Keep going," I said. She swallowed, tears welling. That my mom isn't who I thought she was, and that I had it really good here, and I didn't appreciate it." I nodded. "That's a start." She lifted her gaze to mine, searching, pleading. "Are you going to let me stay?" "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you learned something," I said. "Or if you're only saying what we want to hear." I learned, she whispered. I swear. I walked to the counter, and picked up a printed sheet of paper. I had spent the entire week drafting it line by line, consequence by consequence. These, I said, handing it to her carefully, are the new rules. She read, apology letters to both of us, real ones. Not sorry I was bad, honest ones. Extra chores for the next month to make up for the disruption to the household. All phone privileges earned back gradually. No social media for 2 weeks. Mandatory family therapy, all three of us. No contact with your mother unless approved by us. Curfew moved to 9 p.m. for the next 2 months. All spending beyond basics must be approved and tracked until trust is rebuilt. I waited for the explosion. The unfair, the you're controlling, the I hate you. But it didn't come. Lila folded the paper slowly, deliberately, then nodded. Okay, she whispered. I deserve this. Joseph inhaled sharply, not in pain, but in relief. So profound, it almost sounded like a sob. And one more thing, I added softly. She looked up. Your money, I said. We're going to help you get it back. Her eyes widened. But you said, we'll pay it back, I explained. But not all at once. You'll earn it week by week, chore by chore. So you understand the value of what was taken from you. She nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Then, in a voice barely audible, why didn't you stop me from leaving? I felt Joseph look at me, waiting for the answer I had held in my chest for months. Because I said quietly, you would have hated me forever if I had. You needed to choose. You needed to see where that choice led. Otherwise, you never would have believed us. Her face crumpled. I was really mean to you, she whispered. Yes, I said gently. You were. She nodded. I'm sorry. Write it in the letter, I replied softly. For the first time in months, maybe years, she smiled. Small, fragile, real. And just like that, the rebuilding began. In the days that followed, our home shifted. Not instantly, not magically, but quietly, the way a storm begins to fade, not with clear skies, but with the absence of thunder. Lila woke up earlier. She stayed downstairs longer. She didn't slam doors or roll her eyes or breathe dramatically every time I asked her to do something as simple as taking out the trash. The tension that once filled every room now hummed at a lower frequency, like a distant noise instead of a constant threat. I didn't trust it at first. Neither did Joseph. Healing rarely begins with fireworks. It begins with discomfort and a choice to lean into it anyway. On the second day, I found Lila at the kitchen table working through the apology letters. She didn't hide them the way she once would have. She looked up when I approached, wary but open. Can I ask you something, she said. Of course. What makes a real apology? She asked, cheeks flushing. I sat beside her. Honesty, I said. Reflection. Taking responsibility without excuses. And showing that you understand the impact of what you did, not just that you feel bad. She nodded slowly, considering my words like they were unfamiliar fruit she wasn't sure how to eat yet. I'll try again, she murmured. I squeezed her shoulder. That's all any of us can do. The extra chores rule began immediately. Lila didn't complain, not once. She swept, wiped counters, did laundry, cleaned the bathrooms, and organized the pantry. She asked how much each task was worth, scribbling numbers into a notebook she kept in her pocket. After earning her first $40, she stared at the small number with a mixture of pride and horror. It'll take forever to get to 3,000, she whispered. That's how long it took you to save it the first time, I reminded her gently. She didn't argue. She just nodded and kept working. Watching her learn the value of effort, the weight of it, the dignity of it, stirred something in me that was both maternal and fragile. Joseph noticed too. More than once, he caught my expression and slipped his hand into mine, silently acknowledging the transformation happening before us. Family therapy started the following week. The therapist, a sharp, empathetic woman named Rebecca, didn't waste time sugarcoating anything. She wasn't interested in pandering or performing. She cut straight through emotional fog with the precision of a surgeon. In the first session, she turned to Lila. You've been using manipulation tactics, she said calmly. Triangulation. Fantasy thinking. You idealized your mother because reality was too painful to face. You took your hurt out on the people who showed up for you. Lila's face burned with shame, but she didn't shut down. She listened, really listened, her shoulders trembling slightly. Then Rebecca turned to Joseph. You're too soft, she said. Too accommodating. You're so afraid of pushing Lila away that you often avoid conflict altogether. That makes Alice carry the weight of enforcing boundaries, which makes her the villain. Joseph swallowed hard. He didn't argue. He just nodded. Then she faced me. And you, she said gently, are too rigid. You prioritize structure over emotional connection. You protect through control. That's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Lila doesn't just need boundaries. She needs tenderness. Her words hit me deeper than I expected. Joseph took my hand, squeezing once. Rebecca wasn't accusing. She was diagnosing. All three of us were part of the imbalance. It's time to build a home where all three of you take responsibility, she said. Not just one. When the session ended, Lila approached me slowly. Are you mad? She asked. No, I said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm proud of you for being open. She nodded shyly. We walked to the car, together the three of us aligned for the first time in months. Meanwhile, the situation with her biological mother spiraled exactly the way we expected and feared. 2 weeks after Lila came home, a message appeared on Joseph's phone. Hey, sweetie, Mom misses you. Want to grab lunch? I'll make it up to you. Let's start over. Lila stared at the message for a long time, jaw tight. What should I say? She asked finally. What do you want to say? I countered. She took a shaky breath, typed slowly, then showed us before hitting send. You stole from me. You lied to me. You used me. When you pay back the $200 you took, we can talk. Until then, lose my number. She pressed send. Then she blocked her mother. A minute later, Joseph's phone buzzed again, this time her mother using his number to bypass the block. This time the tone was different. Angry, defensive, blaming. It wasn't stealing, it was borrowing. She's being dramatic. You two are poisoning her against me. Joseph read it aloud, then deleted the message. She's not changing, he muttered. No, I said quietly. But Lila is. School improved next. Her grades rose. Her teachers emailed saying she seemed more focused, more grounded. She joined the school newspaper. Apparently she liked writing something we never knew because she hid anything vulnerable behind a wall of anger. She made new friends too, ones with curfews, part-time jobs, and parents who actually cared about their whereabouts. The type of kids who saw responsibility as normal, not oppressive. At home, she became more present, more helpful. On a Wednesday night, while Joseph and I prepared dinner, she walked into the kitchen. Can I help? She asked. Joseph nearly dropped the pan. I handed her the cutting board. Sure, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She chopped vegetables carefully, glancing at me occasionally as if waiting for permission to exist in this space. Then, after a long silence, she murmured, I like being here. I'm glad, I said softly. Dinner that night tasted better. Not because of the food, but because of the quiet, steady presence of a girl who was finally coming home emotionally, not just physically. But the moment that nearly broke me happened 3 days later. I was walking through the living room when Lila came downstairs, pausing awkwardly on the last step. Alice, she whispered. Yes. She walked toward me slowly, then suddenly wrapped her arms around me. A full hug, a real one. 30 seconds. Silent, shaking slightly. By the time she pulled away, my eyes were burning. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. Joseph stood in the hallway, watching with his hand over his mouth, eyes wet. You did good, he said quietly once Lila disappeared upstairs. We did good, I corrected. He smiled. We weren't done healing, not even close. But for the first time, I believed we would get there. 6 weeks passed. Not long enough to erase the damage of the past year, but long enough to begin stitching together what had been torn apart. Long enough for Lila to soften in ways I once doubted were possible. Her apology letters were the first sign of real change. The initial drafts were short surface-level attempts at appeasement, but each time I sent them back. Think deeper, I told her. What did you feel? Why did you act the way you did? And what did your actions do to us? She didn't argue, didn't roll her eyes. She went upstairs, rewrote, and tried again. On the third attempt, she came down the stairs, slowly holding the pages with both hands, as if afraid they might crumble. Can I read them to you? She asked. Joseph and I sat on the couch. She stood in front of us, voice trembling. She talked about anger she didn't understand, abandonment she never processed, resentment she misplaced on us because we were the easiest targets. She talked about idealizing her mother because the truth hurt too much to hold. She apologized not just for the yelling, but for the cruelty for knowing exactly where to strike to cause the deepest wounds. Joseph cried. I didn't, not then, but later that night in the shower, I let the warm water hide the shape of my tears. Her words had been honest, raw, painful in the best possible way. The chore system continued. Lila earned back $400 across the first weeks, a slow climb that mirrored her emotional rebuilding. She complained once, just once, about how long it would take. That's exactly how long it took you to save it the first time I reminded her. She nodded, accepting the truth instead of turning it into an argument. Seeing that maturity settle into her bones, seeing her confront effort without resentment, felt like watching a flame finally learn to warm instead of burn. Family therapy deepened too. Rebecca didn't hold back. She called out every pattern Lila leaned on: deflection, guilt tripping, emotional manipulation, fantasy logic. But she also named something else, something important. "You're not bad," she told Lila. "You were scared. And when people are scared, they often hurt the ones who feel safest." Lila wept during that session. We both held her hands. Rebecca called out Joseph's fear of conflict, his tendency to retreat instead of confront. She called out my tendency to armor myself too tightly to protect instead of comfort. It wasn't criticism, it was clarity. It was the three of us learning how to stop surviving each other and finally start understanding each other. But of course, the world outside therapy wasn't done testing us. 2 weeks into the healing process, Lila came downstairs holding her phone, emotionless, blank. "My mom texted me," she said. Joseph and I sat up immediately. "What did she say?" I asked. Lila handed the phone to me. "Hey, baby girl. Your old mom misses you. Let's start over. I'll take you shopping. It'll be fun like the old days. Tell Alice and Joseph you want to see me. I'm trying here." There were 1,000 things I could have said, 1,000 ways I could have warned her, but I had learned something important. When healing is real, control must loosen. "What do you want to say to her?" I asked. Lila stood quietly for a moment. Then she typed, "You stole from me. You lied to me. You left me. When you pay back the $3,200 you took, we can talk. Until then, don't contact me." She hit send, blocked the number, put the phone face down. Joseph exhaled a shaky breath. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said honestly, "but I will be." I didn't say it out loud, but a part of me broke for her then. Not the angry part, the maternal part. The part of me that understood what it meant to lose the parent you kept defending long after they stopped deserving it. Loss, even when necessary, still cuts. Then came the predictable chaos. Her mother started messaging Joseph instead, waves of accusations, excuses, and self-victimization. It wasn't stealing, it was borrowing. "She's dramatic. You're influencing her." Joseph blocked her too. 2 days later, a letter arrived from the Child Support Enforcement Office. Her mother had been pulled over for a broken taillight. The officer found thousands owed in back support. She was arrested, released on a payment plan, and for the first time in 3 years, small child support checks began arriving in the mail. Joseph didn't celebrate. Neither did I. But Lila looked at the envelope one afternoon and whispered she really was never going to change. Then she slid the check toward me. "Put it in the new account, the one she can't touch." Her voice cracked on that last word. School blossomed for her too. Her grades lifted. Teachers praised her engagement. She joined the school newspaper, made new friends who didn't treat rebellion like a personality trait. She even asked Joseph for help studying for her permit test. "You explain things in a way I understand," she said quietly one night, curled on the couch with the manual. Joseph blinked fast, trying to hide how much that meant. But the moment that defined everything happened in the hallway one evening. Lila found me sorting laundry. She hesitated in the doorway. "Alice," she asked. "Yes, sweetheart." She stepped closer. "Why? Why did you let me leave? You knew it would be horrible. You knew she wouldn't take care of me. Why didn't you stop me?" I set the laundry aside and sat on the edge of the bed. She sat beside me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel her shaking. When I answered, my voice felt like it came from somewhere years older than my body. "Because if I forced you to stay, I said you would have hated me forever. You had to choose, and you had to see where that choice led. Otherwise, you'd always believe your mother was the parent you should have had." Her face crumpled, tears spilled. She leaned into me without hesitation, Jay first. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I know," I murmured, stroking her hair. "And I forgive you." She sobbed into my shoulder. Joseph watched from the doorway, wiping his own eyes. Weeks later, another message came from her mother, this time through an old phone Lila forgot she still had. "Hey, baby girl, let's try again. I can do better. We'll go shopping. Let me be your mom again." Lila stared at the phone for a long time. "What do you think she asked me?" I think I said slowly that people show you who they are through actions, not words. She's had a lot of words. Lila nodded, then she deleted the message, turned off the phone, placed it back in the drawer. "Maybe someday," she whispered, "but not today." "That's fair," I said softly. She stepped forward and hugged me again, tight, warm, grateful. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it." I kissed the top of her head. "That's what family does," I said. She lifted her head, eyes shining. "Real family," she corrected. "Yes," I said, "real family." And for the first time since she'd come into my life 7 years earlier, I knew she finally meant it.